modern time. But the identification from the first century makes perfect sense within the context of Revelation. But these historical symbols also need to be plumbed for their ongoing significance. Now, it doesn't mean that we cannot make any guess as to what these beasts will stand for. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, when John was writing this letter, this piece of writing, he was living under the regime of Roman Empire. He was going through a great suffering because of his faith in Christ. And he's writing this apocalyptic letter to the churches to encourage them not to give in, not to give up, but to endure and to persevere. And you're going to face a lot of trouble, but don't forget that the slaughtered lamb is the conquering lamb. It may seem weak, it may seem vulnerable, but at the end of the day, what the slaughtered lamb will do is going to redeem you with his blood. And we will have victory not because of who we are or what we have done for him, but because of what this lamb did for us on the cross. So from the perspective of John as the writer, this beast must be someone in his lifetime, in his own context. It cannot be, so secondarily, it may be someone who is from the future, but primarily, he's thinking about someone in his lifetime that his readers know about. It would be silly if I tell you something about the future that you never heard about. Now, if I tell you about someone, if I preach in such a way that doesn't make sense to you, it will not be helpful. Now, the reason that we need to think so hard about what they mean because we are living in a different historical context. If we were the recipients of this book, who are living in the first century, what John wrote might have been very familiar to them because they are living in the same historical context. But we are so removed from the historical context. For us, it's very difficult what that means. But for them, they share the same worldview, the same life setting. That whatever may be very confusing to us may not be too confusing to the readers in the first century because they are living in the same context. The role of deception and propaganda is to make evil look good, the demonic divide, violence like peacemaking, the tyranny and oppression like liberation. It makes blind, unquestioning allegiance appear to be freely chosen and religiously appropriate devotion. That is the role of the evil. Now let's look at the first one. Evil look good. Isn't that scary? Demonic divide. I mean, the demon will be taken as some kind of divine being. Violence like peacemaking. What the Roman Empire did whenever they conquered the new land, they built a school, they built a stadium, they built the infrastructure for the people, and they were talking about the Roman peace. I come to you with a peace that nobody can give to you. If you come under my regime, I will protect you from any enemy that you can possibly think of. As long as you are under my power, you will be safe. So because of that kind of propaganda, a lot of people did not revolt against the Roman Empire because once they're under the power of the Roman Empire, their life got better. Wouldn't you want to live in a place where you have the newly built infrastructure? I mean, you have a better school for your kids. You have the cultural activities for your family. You have a better stadium. You have a better anything, right? With the money, Roman Empire is trying to convince people that we are good people. The tyranny and oppression like liberation. Although they are under the regime of the Roman Empire, many people might think that we are liberated from the poverty. We are liberated from from the threat of our enemies. But in fact, are they really liberated? No, they're still under the power of Roman Empire. It makes blind, unquestioning allegiance appear to be freely chosen and religiously appropriate devotion. Now, it is really the crowd syndrome, or the what do you call the crowd? The multitude syndrome. The multitude. You know, I mean, when you are with the other people in the in a multitude, in a big crowd, you become. I mean, you conform to the same kind of standard, right? But Nazi now, something I am really wondering until now that the German, very logical people, I don't know how they were able to listen to Hitler and kill 6 million Jews. When you speak to German now, they're very smart people. They know what is right and wrong. But even 60 years ago, I don't know how they made such a stupid decision. Isn't that amazing that they, such a smart people who are building all this Mercedes and BMW and all these great cars and they have come up with this stupid idea to get rid of all the Jews on the face of the earth. Now, in my opinion, that is the power of evil. It has a power to brainwash us that what we are doing for you is for your own sake. Isn't that what Satan does for us if you look at the book of Genesis? When the snake came along, it says, I'm going to make you wise. I'm going to tell you how to become wise like God. Do you want to be wise? And Eve said, okay, that would be cool if I become like God. Let me tell you. You see the tree in the middle of the garden? You see the fruit that looks so tasty, right? Go and eat it. Then you will be like God. Okay, but God told me something about that tree and that fruit. He told me that I should not eat, but I can eat from any other tree, but not from that tree. Oh, you're wrong, because God doesn't want you to be wise as He is. That's what Satan is. At the end of the world, when the world is going to come to an end, there will be people who appear out of nowhere with that kind of deceitful heart, who are trying to deceive people, who are trying to take people away from Christ. Now, who or what is the 666 in Revelation 13? Now, in the ancient world, the number was very, very important. If you look at the Greek alphabet or the Hebrew alphabet, each alphabet, if you look at Hebrew here, the alphabet has the number attached to it. The candidates for being the fulfillment of 666 and thus being the Antichrist have been numerous over the centuries. The majority of scholars today believe that 666 is a reference to the Emperor Nero, who was one of the worst king, one of the most brutal king in the Roman Empire. For the following reasons, we call this gematria. Gematria is a kind of rhetorical device that gives the meaning to the number. In other words, by the number you will recognize what that means, because each letter in the Hebrew word has the letter value. Now, the Greek for Nero Caesar, the Nero Kaiser, transliterate into Hebrew as NRWNQSR here. Now the Hebrew you're reading from the right to left, not the left and right. So Nun, Resh, Vav, Nun, Kaf, Smak, and Resh. Now, if you add up all these numbers, now if you transliterate the Nero Caesar into the Hebrew name, And using Hebrew gematria with the conventional number values as shown below, if you add all this up, it will become the 666. Now, would that be just a coincidence? Maybe, but if you're writing something as important as 666 to your readers, you will have to write in such a way that your readers will understand. But you will write in such a way that the Roman emperor will not easily recognize. If they easily recognize, you will be in big trouble. If you, like, you know, when our forefathers in Korea, when they were fighting against, when they were fighting for independence from the Japanese regime, they were fighting for their independence, and they did not write in Korean, because if they write in Korean, the Japanese will find out. So they were using the codes, the numbers, or some kind of weird writing, so that when the Japanese authority will find out, they wouldn't know what that means. It's that kind of similar kind of literary device. You will not be so familiar to the Roman emperor, or you will not be so familiar to the Roman officials, but it will be common to the Hebrew people who understand Hebrew. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
The same two words can also be transliterated without the final N in Neron into Hebrew. Now, if you look at, if you get rid of the N, it comes to the 616. Now, what's interesting about this is that we have many ancient manuscripts of the book of Revelation, and not every ancient manuscript of Revelation has the same number. Some of the ancient manuscript has the 616 instead of 666. Isn't that amazing? That if you get rid of the N at the end, this gives the sum of 616, which is the number that actually appear in some manuscripts of Revelation. In other words, now, I have to go back and tell you something about the manuscript. We don't have the original document of the Bible. Is that shocking? We don't have the original document of the Bible. What we have here is the translation of the copies of copies of copies of copies of the original manuscript. Then you might start wondering, oh my, Dr. Shin, I thought the Bible was inspired by God. Are you telling me that the Bible is the translation of the copies of the copies and of the copies and of? In fact, we have more than thousands of copies of the New Testament. And what's interesting is that we don't have the whole document. We only have a piece and piece, because they're all worn out. They're more than 2,000 years. The earliest document that we have is around 100 AD. 130 AD, which means that about 100 years after Jesus died on the cross, we have the manuscript remaining from that period, 100 years after Jesus died. That's the earliest document that we have, earliest copy of the Bible that we have. Now, when you copy the manuscript, we'll need to copy every word for word, but would it not be easy for you to make a mistake if you're a scribe, if you're a copy? It'd be very easy to make a mistake, right? That's why, in some cases, not every manuscript has the same word. Some manuscripts, which are found, has the 666. Other manuscripts, which are found also, has the 616. It's very possible that the people thought because the Nero Caesar can be written in two ways, with N or without N, right? And without N, the number will be added up to 616. With N, it will be added up to 666. But what interesting is that we only have two numbers appearing in all the manuscripts. We only have either 666 or the 616. In other words, what's interesting is that the existence of these two manuscript variants, each of which matches the value for Nero, conclusively demonstrate that the Nero was intended. Now, either way, the 600, well, either 616 or 666, the both of them refer to the Nero, the Caesar. It's very possible that from the John's perspective, it was the Nero that he was referring to Antichrist, because the Nero, as we see, he was one of the most brutal emperor. He persecuted he persecuted Christianity so much, so harshly, that the Nero is remembered among the Jews as one of the worst enemy of the Christianity. So I agree with Richard Balkan that to John's mind, when he was referring to 666, he was not referring to European Union or Hitler or Saddam Hussein, but he was referring to someone that everyone would know at the time. The names of other emperors also add up to 666. The Caligula or the Domitian. Domitian is another great evil king. In fact, the book of Revelation was written during the time of Domitian. So if you add these names up, it also becomes the 666. So all of these calculations point to the likelihood that the 666 indicates at the literal level an imperial figure who in a very ungodly way pretends to be God. So and it's important to note that if the identification with the Nero were to be adopted, this does not mean that John believed that Nero redivivus, the redivivus, led us to expect the Nero to return surely. Rather, the coming Antichrist would be like a Nero-like figure who would be the antitype of that evil anti-Christian. Now, by referring to Nero, John does not say that only the Nero is the ultimate Antichrist figure, but whoever the Antichrist figure will be in the future will be like Nero, who is really good at pretending to be divine. Because what the ancient people believed was that the Roman people believed that some of their emperor who had passed away will come back to life later on and will rule their Roman Empire once again. They actually believed in the resurrection, reincarnation of their passed away emperors. Now, I don't think that John believed in such. Right? I mean, John is a Christian. He doesn't believe that the people can be reincarnated. Right? What he's saying is that the Antichrist will be someone who pretends to be like God. Right? Who pretends to be like divine, with the great military and the religious power. We don't know exactly how the figure will look like, what kind of form he or she will take, right? But will be the kind of Nero-like figure who will be the antitype of that evil anti-Christian. Can we guess who the Antichrist will be in our lifetime? I have no idea. If you find out, please let me know. I will give you a PhD for that. If you can really persuade me.
Previously, they say it's Obama.
I mean, with all sorts. The Kim Jong-il of the North Korea. I've heard many. I mean, it's good to be aware. It's good to be spiritually awake, and make sure that we don't we end up not recognizing Antichrist when he actually appears. I mean, we have to be spiritually awake. But it does mean that we will be able to know exactly. Because if the Antichrist is so obvious, he will not write about it in the book of Revelation. He's giving us all these warnings because and when the Antichrist appears, it's not going to be so obvious. You will not be able to tell whether that 666 is really God or the divine-like Antichrist. You won't be able to tell because he comes in disguise. So for me, it's it's an interesting, and many people are not happy with my interpretation because it's less exciting. They want me. Dr. Shin, you should have some kind of conspiracy theory that we don't know about. It's like whether the alien really exists. They want to know the conspiracy theory. If I know something special about Antichrist, or I don't think the Antichrist is yet to appear.
But when he appears, will we know who he is?
We have few hints. You will have the international impact. And they will allure us to worship something other than God. You will look like divine because you will have 7 hands and 10 horns.
Literally.
No. Symbolic. I don't think they will have a 10 horns. That's what you're seeing in the well, actually, if you look at some of the medieval painting, you will find the dragon with the 7 hands and 10 horns. All these paintings were inspired by the book of Revelation. And many of the hardcore rock group, I mean, many of their cover sheet, it really inspired by the book of Revelation. I was reading one interview by the very hardcore, really Antichrist, the rock group. They always get their image idea from the book of Revelation. Isn't that interesting? Well, not interesting. Is that blasphemous? These people who, the leader of the rock group will pee on the Bible in their concert. Then they will burn it on the altar. Yeah. That's what they're doing. And they will put the cross upside down. And they will burn it. That's how evil they are. But they get their cover. The cover logo, the sheet. I mean, every album they would have to cover. What do you call it? The cover page.
Yeah.
What the leader said. He's getting his ideas from the Revelation. So it is amazing that the people are using Revelation, in a way that was not supposed to be used. So I don't think it will be obvious, but I guess as the people of God, we will be able to recognize it when it appears. Because God wants us to persevere and God wants us to endure. What exactly when and how it's going to come and what form it will take.
But how about just now mentioned the economical way, you have to have the code in order to buy. So for our modern days, will it also happen?
Like barcode or?
Yes.
I really don't think that refers to barcode.
Or something cheap,
Sometimes.
Yeah, we were forced to use it to do trading or to buy anything. The book is written for that. During that time, maybe it's not so advanced, right? But it seems like
because the
very big
seal or the mark was a very common exercise in the Roman Empire. If you are a slave, you will get the mark.
Oh, okay.
So it's a very common practice. So by the mark, the people will know to whom you belong. So if you belong to Mr. Shin, then you will have a Mr. Shin like
a stamp.
The stamp, yes,
That
on your body.
burning
Yeah, burning on your body. And you will know, it will tell the people that you are the slave who belongs to which family. So we don't have to go all the way to barcode to explain what the symbol is, because that symbol was very popular in the ancient world. And, now, whether it's I cannot say for sure. I mean, but I really don't think that John was thinking about barcode when he was writing this. Okay, in the year 1970, there will be a new invention called barcode, and I'm gonna write. I don't think that that's the case. Maybe. Because that mark doesn't have to be literal. It could be symbolical, and just simply knowing that you're a Christian. If you're living at the end of the world, the people may not want to do any business with you. Knowing that you worship God, even without barcode or some kind of chip, they will know that you worship God, and they just may not want to do any business with you. Exactly, that's what happened in the Roman Empire. When they found out that you're a Christian, they stopped doing they stopped any kind of commercial interaction with you. So you will have a hard time surviving as a Christian. So in the future, I don't know how that will take place. But I think yes, we will be very much disadvantaged when that time comes. And it will be hard for us not to deny. We'll be forced to deny because our life becomes so much miserable. That's why we need to persevere, we need to endure. That's why I don't want to live too long. Any other comments?
Lord Shin, if the interpretation is like this, so John's revelation is not really a revelation.
Yeah.
It is a revelation.
Yeah.
It is now, what I'm saying is that we have to understand in the primary way what John intended in the first place, in the first century. Then we have to look forward to what that is going to mean for us. But it is very difficult. It's almost impossible. We have all sorts of candidates for the Antichrist.
Yeah.
But I guess you will be like a Nero-like figure. But it will not be a reincarnation of Nero. It's not going to be Nero. It's going to come back to life and it's going to rule us again. I don't think so. That's not going to happen. But it will be a Nero-like figure who has a political and religious interest in the people, and he will dominate people with his great power. And he's going to somehow disguise himself as if he's God himself, and people will be fooled by him so easily. Right? So, any other question? Any other comments? Yeah. Okay. And there's like.